1.
People with learning disabilities learn different, obviously, but does that mean the way they learn is wrong? A quote from John Adam. When I was younger, I went to Catholic school from pre-K to 3rd grade. At first, my grades were good, and I was keeping up with my schoolwork. Then in 2nd grade, my grades started failing. My parents did everything in their power to figure out what was going on. I went to Akron Children's Hospital for testing. I found out that I had expressive language disorder. I learned differently than others. I had help from an intervention specialist teacher. The teacher was qualified and experienced, but however, the teacher was not there all the time because the teacher had to service the public school students first. Because of this experience, I had done extensive research on this topic. Hello, my name is Audrey Masters, and I'm going to talk about how special education in non-public schools is different and may not be as comprehensive or complete. The main points that will be covered are Catholic and private schools, special education, discrimination, a voucher program, and funding. The first main point is discrimination. Students from private schools with disabilities do not have constitutional rights to demand public-funded educational services in religious or in private environments. A newspaper article called Appeals Court Rejects Parochial Schools Disability Case. It was written in 2014 about a boy from Manchester, New Hampshire. His parents argued that the Individuals with Disability Act is unconstitutional because it does not mandate religious or other private schools to receive the same level of services as public school students do. The court also held Gray versus Manchester School District, and that also failed because there's no constitutional requirement saying that the government has to fund private schools. This is a problem because many religious or other private schools does not have the proper funding for their services. Individuals with Disability Act became law in 1975. An article called One Hand Gives While the Other Hand Takes Away, written by Russo, Osborne, and Masucci, talks about the services provided at public schools or at a neutral site for students with disabilities who attended Catholic or private schools. But questions still do remain if it appeals to students whose parents voluntarily enrolled them into Catholic schools, as well as funding restrictions, which may mean students will receive fewer services than they did before. The next is the voucher program that has caused some concerns. The program requires schools to adhere by the principles of the Individual with Disability Educational Act. The article was written by Blackwell and Robinson, called Schools Choice Vouchers and Special Education. Special education services fear that the program would provide funding to schools that do not have the capability nor the legal requirement to serve students with special needs. Also, the program requires parents to forgo their rights under the federal disability law. If this is not addressed, Catholic or private schools will not have the proper funding. An article called The Public Funding of Private Schools, written by Barnhart in 1986, says on moral grounds, the special states of Roman Catholic schools is biased on which schools could or could not be funded. But there are also 3 arguments saying for public funding for private schools. There are social intolerance, equality of educational opportunities, and spending priorities. However, there is a solution: equal funding for both public and private schools for students with disabilities. A website called Special Education Funding says that there is a plan in place for funding these services. However, it is federal funding, and the Congress have not contributed to the Individuals with Disabilities Educational Act Part B. If this plan was possible, Congress would have to start contributing 40% to each student to receive their services. Schools will be able to hire speech and language therapists as well as intervention specialists, and they would have up-to-date IEPs as well as other services. In conclusion, I have talked about how students in Catholic or private schools are not getting the services they need, but there is a solution on how these services can be required. As stated at the beginning of the speech, special education in non-public schools is different and may not be as comprehensive or complete. Look into how schools are funded and ask parents or guardians for participation. Before I go, I want to leave you with one final thought. This is a quote from an article called Catholic Conference of Ohio. It says, "Parentally placed private school children with disabilities do not have individual entitlement for services." I find this appalling. But what about you? Thank you for your time.